Can you practice Christianity as well as paganism? Well, dag the eve of his fáilte. Hi, hello, and welcome. I'm John O'Sullivan from the Irish Pagan School, and recently I responded to a question about mixed pantheon belief structures, as in people who follow or believe in different pantheons and deities. Um, and it was specifically a query about worshiping the Norse gods and the Irish gods, and I was able, of course, to give some direction, some pointers, and to kind of talk about the history of Norse people in Ireland and how there is historical crossover. So this necessitated a follow up from someone else who has asked the following question, and I think it's a very detailed kind of question, and I wanted to honor that by reading it out. So this one comes from Valentina X8266, and it is: Can I practice Christianity as well as paganism? I know that the Catholic Church, religion I was baptized in as a baby and raised with, would say no and denounce me as a heretic for even the suggestion that I am not partic- for even that suggestion, but I'm not particularly concerned with what the Catholic Church thinks. Okay, yeah, I can support that. My stance or relationship to Christianity is that I do believe in Jesus Christ and that he was a man who walked on this earth, and I believe in the message that he taught while here. Love everyone as I have loved you. Let he who is without sin cast the first stone. Do unto others as you would have done unto you. Things such as that, as they were taught to me. However, I have no respect for the Catholic Church as an institution and do not acknowledge its authority. The corruption and the rampant abuse and hypocrisy in it drove me away from faith and spirituality entirely for years, and I have only began to return to a spiritual or religious path once I realized my problem was with the church as an institution and the people abusing power rather than faith or belief in the teachings or faith in general. I began to feel called to the Irish or Celtic paganism about a year ago, and in particular I feel called to bridge it and to work with my ancestors. The more I learn about her, the more I feel her energy has been around me for many years. I just did not understand or have the words to describe it. Similar to how you described finding your way to the Daga. That was me, and something I shared. Much of my recent learning has been with the IPS channel, Gaurav Mahaga, thank you, as well as with the Om Academy and books on the subject that my family already owned. I feel a call to both paths in a way neither one feels wrong. My grandma, who basically raised me, was a Catholic, but she also engaged in witchcraft and taught me elements of both, as has my mother. I'm sincerely trying to avoid doing the grab bag of putting in tokens and expecting blessings, as you put it, and have been working to have a meaningful relationship with divinity and striving to live my life following the principles of those teachings and in harmony with my environment and giving back to others. My altar tends to change with the season, holidays, intent, etc., but I keep various spaces and objects sacred and consistent. Due to a sheer lack of space, a small apartment, I only have one altar. Is this a way of practice considered disrespectful or disingenuous? If so, how would I start fixing it? So, Valentina Gurov Mahagas, thank you very much for the question. And I really love a well thought out question. I really, really do. I have all the time in the world for people who have taken the time to consider their question and to rationalize it down and break it down for themselves. Um, if someone comes to me with an answer, it's like, oh, I have this great answer. I'm like, great, good on you. I want to find my own answer. I want to explore the questions and get to eh, see where my mental processes take me. So I'm more about questions than I am about answers personally. And so this was a good question, which is why I wanted to kind of read it out because it's quite common. It's understandable that many other people feel the same. People who come to the IPS, the Irish Pagan School, have similar experiences or disillusionment when it comes to the authority structure that is the Catholic Church, and the power structures to go around those things. And that's where I had my own problems with it too. I definitely had my own break with the hypocrisy of it, the abuses of it, and the consistent covering for their own failings whilst expecting people to live to divine ideals that they don't espouse themselves. Now, again, there are people within that faith structure, there are people within clergy that I have positive experiences with, and I will speak very highly of. Um, and I will have all the time in the world for them, and conversations with them are very enlightening as well. But like you, Valentina, it is about the authority and the structure, the power structure that has been built around it, about finance and control and domination. And talking about Ireland, like I include the Catholic Church as people who colonized Ireland, and we still have a difficulty separating church and state in this country, and to try and move towards a secular to society and allow for place for spirituality, allow place for faith, but not at an institutionalized level, not to this degree that it controls the education system of an entire country, for example, or the reproductive rights of an entire country. Anyway, yes, not to get off topic, really to kind of get back to your question, can I practice Christianity as well as paganism? The answer, not hard to say. You can do whatever path you feel right for you, because at the end of the day, I'm honored that you would ask the question and you would see me as someone who could provide an answer, but it's not for anyone else to dictate to you your spiritual existence. Now, with that said, again, always caveats and addendums, it is about approaching it with honor and eth- honor, honesty, and ethics. And that's where it is about finding as much information as possible and approaching things respectful of the cultures that they come from, respectful of the origins that they come from, and the practices that have evolved over the time. Like, I'm not just going to turn around and say I can just start believing in indigenous First Nation kind of ritual practices. I have no connection to that culture. I have no connection to that landscape. I have no connection to that people. Now, I do know that there's a strong bond between First Nation tribes and Irish tribes because of how we have supported each other and recognized each other as victims of colonialism over fucking generations and hundreds of years. But that doesn't entitle me to take from those cultures. In the same way, like I'm not gonna start practicing. I actually I did go and I engaged in kind of spiritual training a long time ago when I was trying to figure out my own pathway, and that involved like energy work, Reiki healing, and chakras. And I was like, this doesn't feel right for me because it, the what I was being educated with had been completely devoided from its culture as to be almost unrecognizable of the culture. It was taking the words and it just got very confusing very quickly, and I felt wrong engaging in those practices of energy work, and I had to find a different way to work that for myself. So it the feeling wrong and the feeling right is something that you mentioned, Valentina. Like, it is about that being open to being wrong, being open to being corrected, but also pursuing that core quickness, that right relationship, that fundamental feeling of it is right. And not because ego tells me so, or not because like I really want it to be, or I imagine it as such. It's kind of devoiding all of those niggles of personal identity and getting down to what is the fundamental truth of my spiritual existence, which is a deep psychological process, which isn't done easily and isn't ticked over a weekend's conference with a special certificate at the end. It is about a lifelong pursuit of how do I honor my spiritual self and how do I honor my spiritual connections every day? How do I live to those values? How do I display those values that inherently give me spiritual fulfillment? In the same way as we need physical exercise to give us physical fulfillment, we need emotional connection to give us emotional fulfillment, we need intellectual stimulus to give us intellectual fulfillment. There is a need for spiritual fulfillment. For me, it's one of the facets of being what we are as creatures in this world, but then also as the energy that lives within or that manifests within the physical form of what we are in this world. So, spiritual fulfillment is something that needs to be pursued and needs to be looked for, but also some people will choose spiritually. Okay, to make the analogy about ice cream for a moment, some people just choose a vanilla ice cream and that is absolutely fine. Some people need honeycomb, raspberry ripple. Some people go full on Neapolitan. That is okay. It is about their own expression of their spirituality as they pursue their spiritual fulfillment. The ones who are doing it right are acknowledging the roots, the origins, the lore, the cultures involved in it, and honoring that as much as honoring their spiritual fulfillment, and not just placing their own spiritual needs or their own. intentional wants above other people's energy, intent, and efforts. So I'm not going to turn around and start teaching you about energy healing or Reiki work or chakras or anything like that at all because it is not my fucking lane. It is not for me to speak over native voices who come from the culture where that expression of spirituality is rooted. In the same way, I'm not going to start talking or teaching about First Nation deities and the landscape in which they develop and the cultures that they come from, because again, it's not my fucking lane. Even if I do know stuff about it, even if I have explored a whole lot of information about various types of spirituality, because I did when I went on my own spiritual journey, when the disillusionment with the Catholic Church arrived for me, I went to read as much as I could. I went to explore as much as I could to try and find out where it fits for me. Where do I find my spiritual fulfillment? And I was even given books that I'm not supposed to have read by people within other spiritual pathways. And I honor that and I accept that and I'm grateful for it. But I'm not going to start teaching and talking about those other things because it's not for me to do it. But if I have elements of that that I honor and practice within myself, then it is just about honoring and practicing that within myself, for myself, if that makes sense. So, to try and stay on topic and not get too far off into John rants about spiritual growth, it's not for anyone really to tell you no or tell you call you a heretic. Um, it is about you being honest and honorable and ethical in your pursuit of spiritual fulfillment, because that means that you're living in right relationship with yourself, but also acknowledging the efforts and energy of the generations of people who've gone beforehand exploring those practices. And this is where I'd like to connect it to the other element to your story there, Valentina, um, the generational element. If you have practices that have been handed to you by your mother, by your grandmother, down your matriarchal line, that is something to be honored for itself. That is something to be acknowledged as part of your lived spirituality and your lived practices. In fact, there are many kind of practices that we have in Ireland that have been handed down through matriarchal lineages over the generations. So you include that in your story. Living a full spiritually ethical and honorable life does involve honoring the practices of your ancestors and your lineage in that way. And so, yeah, keep doing what you're doing, but be open to the fact that you might need more education, that there's stuff that you need to learn. Even me, I will always be a student. I will always be open to the fact that I could be wrong and I want to know more. I want to explore questions when I'm presented with them and figure out, do I need to grow in a different direction? Do I need to change something that I'm doing? A while ago, I designed a T-shirt which came out of a conversation that we were hosting online live sessions at the school every second Saturday of the month. It is just community service. It's just gatherings, people coming around, talking and being around each other, acknowledging and seeing each other. If you're on the mailing list, you can join them. They're second Saturday social sessions because I love alliteration. But there was banter happening in one of those, which came to a very entertaining thing, um, which I then designed onto a T-shirt because people thought, oh yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah, we should totally get a T-shirt on that. And I was like, I can make that happen. But then I was contacted by someone when after I launched the T-shirt saying, you do realize the wording that you're using there is in a way anti-Semitic. And I was like, oh fuck, I did not know that. And I pulled the T-shirt, pulled the blog, pulled the video, and removed it entirely because I didn't know what I didn't know. But the onus was on me to do better when I did know. And it was someone that I absolutely trusted, and it wasn't just a knee-jerk opinion from a random person in the internet. But even so, I don't want to be a cause of hurt or harm because of ignorance. So that's where we need to approach all of our practices. Be open and be compassionate and respectful to being wrong and to knowing that we need to grow and do more and do better. Don't get caught up in this hardline mentality that we see from the Catholic Church and from that kind of process of if it's not our way, it's a heretic. If it's not our way, then you're doing it wrong. If you don't follow the one true God, then you're going to hell, fire, damnation, blah blah blah. Who's to say? Maybe we are all destined to hell. Maybe actually, hopefully for me, when I pass out of this life, I'll go to Chalk which is the House of the Dead in the ancient Irish mythology, which is specifically referred to by a Christian monk who wrote down the stories about Chalk and then included it paragraph at the bottom saying that's where the heathens and unbelievers of the one true faith go when they die. And I'm like, great, sign me up for Choctaw. I'm there. Punch my card. Check me in. I'm sure I have a standing reservation that Dagdas holds a room for me because he's also known as Dag the Dawn. He does function in that capacity, overseeing the dead. But back to Valentina. Sorry for the tangents. I apologize. It is about honoring your own processes and honoring your ancestry and exploring things with an open mind and a quest towards ethical fulfillment of your spiritual self. In regards to the altar space, if it functions for you, that's fine. There's no judgment. It is about making it an active space that you visit on a regular basis, that you engage in your spiritual practices and spiritual activity with. But I've had people who start worshiping the Dagda and they're like, "Oh, I need to make space for Dagda on my altar," and then they come back to me a couple of weeks later and I was like, "Yeah, I don't feel the Dagda in my altar space, but whenever I walk into the kitchen, I feel him there." And so they've ended up making a mini shelf on it in a press, and that's where they put Dagda offerings or Dagda coffee. They follow I make I put cream in coffee, and that's my offering to the Dagda. So there's people now giving Dagda coffee all around the world to give him that first cream. But it doesn't. The person felt the kitchen is where that makes it right for me, and so they I asked, "Is that right? Is that wrong?" And I was like, "It's not for me to tell you how your altar works for you. It's for you to be engaging actively and energetically with that space for your spiritual process and spiritual growth. And if it works for you, you'll know. If you're feeling that it doesn't, change it." So yeah, um, it is about respecting yourself, respecting your processes, and respecting your ancestry and your lineages, and then respecting the cultures that those practices come from. We can't just say, well, you have to respect my decisions on these things without offering equivalent respect to where, ethically speaking, these belief structures come from. And that's why in the other video I talked about the cross pantheon multi faith belief. What you've done is you've signed up for more work because the only way to do that honorably and ethically is to learn, is to go deep and learn as much information as possible so that you can explore every question, you can find your own answers, and then be open to your answers changing when you know more information. So, hopefully, this has been helpful, Valentina. Hopefully, anyone else who is struggling with the process of Christianity and paganism, like there is a syncretic blend of that belief structure in Ireland. We talk about candle magic. You may as well be lighting the candles in the church for your grandparents. Or so many people taking their national exams here. It's like, it's okay, my granny lit a candle for me. We talk about the Child of Prague, which is this representation of the infant Jesus Christ. And this statue in Ireland, if it's placed outside under a bush, you can guarantee good weather for the next day. Weather magic, literal weather magic using Christian iconography. Candle magic using the functions of belief or the power source that is belief within the country. There are so many ways to look at this and to break down the kind of structures that have been placed upon spirituality, been regimented by other people or by churches, for example, organized religious practices that have decided to dominate this energy of spirituality or this energy of will and intent, because that's what we're talking about. Magical practice is the movement or the shift of change in energy in line with our intent or our will. So yeah, there is protection to be taken in saying your Our Fathers and your Hail Marys and being part of like a Christian belief structure because you're sharing and engaging in belief and that energy of belief. But the problem I always had was the power structures that sat above that, controlling, dictating, and then never living to those ideals as well. Sorry, I'm getting back into rant territory. um, the last thing I would include is that any kind of practice that works for you needs to be acknowledged that it is your practice for you. You're not educating other people in this. You're not saying that this is the one true way. You're not falling into some kind of process where you're bringing other people into this one true way. Because next thing you know, you're building a cult or you're building a organized official religion. Um, I know many people who have a syncretic blend in spirituality in both Christianity and paganism in Ireland, and that is their expression of it. But if you're going to step up into service within a particular community, a pagan community or a Catholic community, that's where they may end up having a bit of a bother because they're straddling across lines that don't conform with either way. And you need to be okay with that. You need to be okay with the fact that this is just how I'm expressing my spirituality for me, and acknowledge that it is a personal pathway for you. In the same way, I'm not going to turn around and just start teaching people this is the one true Dagda way of faith and structure. Absolutely not. I'm not starting a Dagda cult, and I never fucking will. But what I will do is I'll share my experiences with my deity. I'll talk about my arrangements with him. I'll talk about the lore and the mythology that I delve into, the ancestral stories that come from my culture. I'll talk about the culture of Irish people and how that has evolved and changed over time, and how my current relationship with the Dagda today is informed by not just the ancient mythology, but also the lived history of my culture on this island and the people on this island. Because it's my firm belief that he never went anywhere. Just because we were colonized by the Christians who came in and like completely overrode all of our own belief structures or all of our native practices and deities, that doesn't mean the deities disappeared. And I have a welling of sadness within me, which I don't think is actually mine. I think it's more his, because for thousands of years, his name was not said out loud on this island. People didn't know about the good God of the Tuatha De Danann, the big daddy of the Tuatha De Danann, who made sure everyone got fed, made sure everyone was safe. And when people made promises and got in over their heads, he would absolutely bail them out. He would care for them in every way that they could. The good God of the Tuatha De Danann, who would play the music to help people revel and be joyful, or to help people mourn and to weep, or to help people just fucking relax and sleep. I have no problem with JC, Jesus Christ. You know, good lad. Yeah, absolutely. But there's more to a belief structure than just one paradigm or one set of stories. So yeah, I have all the time in the world for JC, and I acknowledge the love, fundamental basics like respect and honor. But also don't forget that JC was 100% against power structures or abuses of power structures. There's literally the story of him being a kid walking into temple, which is the space that's supposed to be for spiritual growth and spiritual check-in, and there's a whole lot of lads money lending and like trading in that spiritual space. He, what does he do? Whips off his belt and beats the shit out of them. He goes against the authority, he goes against the power structure, he goes against the wealth and the money to make space for spirituality, because that was crucially important to the development and the growth. And this is pre his 40 days, 40 nights. This is when he then starts turning up the temple, and all the Pharisees and rabbis are like, wow, this guy fucking knows it. This guy gets it. When he's as a kid talking about all of the belief structures. I'm down with that guy. Absolute. But do I acknowledge him as part of my spiritual growth? No, I don't pursue that connection with him. Do I disregard him entirely and pretend that he doesn't exist? No, because that's not polytheism, which is a fundamental structure of paganism. So it's not an easy question. Well, okay, it's an easy answer in that yes, you need to pursue and follow your own spiritual path. Do it for you. Don't let anyone tell you different. But it's not a simple question because there is a lot of complexity to be considered. And hopefully, I have in some way helped with this, and maybe in some way caused more questions to bubble up, because those questions and how we pursue them and how we pursue our own personal answers is how we actually grow as spiritual entities as much as emotional, physical, and mental entities. Anyway, thank you very much for being here. If you would like to know more about the Irish Pagan School, go to irishpaganschool.com. Whole lot of classes there on it. We do focus specifically on Irish paganism. You won't find Catholic content there. Um, if you want to, if you're not sure about taking a class straight away, take something free. Go to irishpagan.school/free. Years worth of free resources, more videos, more podcasts, readings, even full classes. I do a class on the Dagda, known as Dagda, the Dagda domestic deity, and Hearth Hero. I'm quite proud of that as far as names go for classes, and I've done many classes on the Dagda. So take something, figure something out, fulfill that spiritual need within you by challenging yourself to see what more you can learn and what more you can do. Until next time, look after yourself, take care. Agus Salam. Bye.